Silencing your telephones or turning them off. Five, regularly scheduled meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Air.
Director Amati,
Present.
Director Gagliotti,
Here.
Director Pick,
Here.
Director Leffel,
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here. Director Lamani, can you help us with the pledge of allegiance?
Yes, of course. Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Notifications and announcements. Board member have anything to know?
I did. I saw an announcement that the Monterey Jet Center, FBO, finished fifth overall this year with the Pilots Association. Fifth.
Fifth, okay.
And has the best, that's of all the like 5,000 FBOs, of the best independent, they finished fourth. So Michael Halpern finished number 3 as best line tech, and Jason Gray finished number 1 as best. And Kauai Lopez finished number 2 as best customer service. So they're down there, and we all love them to because they got the great party for us. So I want to bring everybody's attention.
Okay. Okay, what about staff? Do we have any announcements from staff?
Just a reminder, the rodeo mixer with the joint chambers is this evening from 5:30 to 7 out here on the observation deck.
I'm sorry, this evening?
This evening,
Okay.
should be on the calendar, I believe.
I ran into Monica last night at the Giants game.
5:30 to 7 tonight, right?
That is correct.
Okay. When does the rodeo begin?
July sometime, I don't have the exact.
Okay, yeah, wait. Like a lifetime. Public comment. Any member of the public that wishes to comment on something not on the agenda at this time, have 3 minutes to address the board. It should be something under our jurisdiction, you know, like world. Yeah. Okay, please state.
My name's Brian Shields. I'm a field rep with Carpenters Local 646. We're located in Marina. We cover Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Diego County. I appreciate the time to get to speak today, Chair Miller and directors. I just wanted to come across and actually introduce ourselves to the board. I'm not sure that anybody has done this previously. I think it's important that we build a relationship. I know that Hensel and Phelps is going to be doing a project of yours, and we greatly appreciate that level of partnership. That's going to put a lot of working families in this area to work in here, and it won't be bringing in a workforce necessarily. So that's huge. To that same end, I'd like to follow up with each of you. I saw that your emails are on the website, and just schedule a time for a coffee and talk about that a little bit more and what it means when a union general contractor is selected. I hate to ever sound like I am a special interest group, because the fact is I'm not. I come from an experience where I was non-union previously, and I worked my way into becoming a union carpenter. And that transmuted me from living in a trailer with a bunch of guys to being able to afford a piece of property way up on the mountain in Santa Cruz County, but I'm in Santa Cruz County, and with my wife and daughter, and with healthcare, right? And there's a light at the end of the tunnel with retirement, where a lot of folks are staring down the barrel where there's not a retirement at the end of the tunnel. And you may be looking at a broken down body before, right? So how do you continue to pay? And that's where it ended up falling in on social safety networks, just walking into ERs, doing whatever they need to do, but not being able to pay the bill on the back end. And it becomes a tax burden on the rest of us. And so if we have contractors, especially on prevailing wage work, if we have contractors that are invested in healthcare as apprenticeship, right, bringing up a working class and maintaining that workforce here locally, we'll be that dollar that is spent here is going to go so much deeper into the community than it would be if it had been built non-union. So I wanted to applaud you. Thank you for selecting. Thank you for selecting Hensel and Phelps. And I look forward to reaching out and hopefully scheduling a coffee to talk about this a little bit further. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. What's your name again?
Brian Shields.
Brian, thank you for coming, and thank you for partnering with our general contractor on this. Board has always been supportive of trying to stay local with all of it. So, yeah. Okay, any other member of the public wish to talk? I don't. Anybody would like to address the board at this time? Please raise your hand on your app.
Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay, very good. Let's go to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are routine items by nature. It comes with a recommendation from staff to approve. One items on the consent agenda, unless member of the public, staff, or the board wishes to pull an item. Anybody wish to pull an item at this time? Remotely, if you'd like to pull an item, raise your hand.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I see no hands on request to pull.
Thank you. Okay, we have a first and second.
Director Marty.
Aye.
Director Gagliardi. Director Pick.
Yes.
Director Leffel. And Chair Miller.
Okay.
Miller, Mr. Chair, we did skip over item C, approving the proclamation in recognition of appreciating the Executive Director Mike Lapierre's service to the airport.
Yeah. My mistake on that. I'm sorry. I have it right here. That Thursday, we had a retirement party for our executive director, Mr. Michael Lapierre. And at that time, we presented him with a proclamation that signed by all the members of the board. I will read it now. Whereas Mr. Mike Lapierre, an accredited airport executive, began his career in aviation 44 years ago and has had good positions at 6 airports from Rockland, Illinois, with 5 of the 6 airports undergoing new renovation during Mr. Lapierre's tenure. And whereas Mr. Lapierre, Executive Director of the Monterey Regional Airport by the Monterey Peninsula Airport District Board of Directors on June 17, 2015, and began his new role on July 22. Where the last decade accomplishments under his leadership include the construction of a solar farm that generates a substantial amount of electricity on airport property, the acquisition of property at 2801 Monterey Salinas Highway with the assistance of federal grant funding, a water well delivery system designed to reduce reliance on potable water where feasible, the recruitment of the new air service to Seattle, Denver, Dallas, Fort Worth, and CJSX service to multiple locations. Whereas an award of $750,000 from the Small Community Air Service Development Grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to attract nonstop service to Chicago. Fingers are crossed on that one. Growth of passenger employment. For 311,000 winning. Well, that was in 2024. We expect the number will be higher, right, Mark? This year? Yes. Whereas under Director Lapierre's financial stewardship, the airport cash reserve grew from 2.8 million in 2015 to over 15 million in 2020. Department was transitioned to a shared contract with DRO, and staff secured over 200 million in grant funding for safety enhancement programs that included the relocation of the airport rescue and firefighting facility, relocated general aviation and commercial aviation ramp construction, and designed a replacement terminal. Structure and the replacement terminal, new long-term parking lot, and a comprehensive plan of finance for the replacement terminal building. And whereas executive director efforts have enriched the Monterey Peninsula Airport District in a meaningful and lasting way, and he has earned and justly deserved his public recognition. Now, therefore, I, Carl M. Miller, Chairman of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District, in concurrence with the Board of Directors, do hereby recognize, commend, and memorialize Executive Director Michael Lapierre's exceptional service to the Monterey Peninsula Airport District and the standard bid upon the date of his retirement in June. Lapierre accomplished a lot in his 10 years here. I thank staff for typing this all out and putting it together. So, it says it all, I agree. Okay. Well, we and one more thing on public comment. Great staff for the groundbreaking. Thank you for that. I know it was an all hands on deck operation. Very, it went off extremely smooth. We had a segment of the community there to create
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay. Regular agenda item. It's 932. Who's going to help us, Chris? By the way, this is Chris Morello's first time as our appointed interim executive director. So
Have some grace. I'm going to punt it over to you.
okay.
As a good executive director would do. Second reading of an ordinance that is actually mandated by the government code to adopt the maps prepared by the state fire marshal, identifying fire zones in different severities, and it also, under an executive order and some other things that have been done, it also gives you opportunities and abilities to make extra effort in certain areas. Certain environmental requirements are waived, not all of them, just some of them. but it makes it easier to clear some fire prone areas, especially those that are in severe and extremely severe zones. I always kind of smile when the legislature demands that a public agency pass an ordinance. They could just make it effective themselves, but I think they want the recognition of every local agency to really analyze where are your severe fire zones, and let's try and deal with them before we have another, Palisades or Campfire or some other, major, calamity. This was a passed to print last time at the last meeting. It has been published. This is now the adoption of the agenda. So this is, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, very good. Director Amati, do you have any questions?
No questions. Just wanted to thank our partners from Monterey Fire who were here last month for the really great.
Director Gabriel?
No question.
Yeah, we discussed this the last time, asked a lot of questions, had a good presentation, as our legal counsel said. An ordinance, two readings, and it served that purpose. Can we have a vote, please?
I would move that we.
Public
We would take public.
Oh, yeah. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this? Nothing here locally. How about anybody who's
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
okay?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 932, an ordinance of the Board of Directors of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District replacing fire severity zones.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Director Amati,
Aye.
Director Gagliardi.
Aye.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel.
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Very good. Let's go to resolution, item number 2, adopting the resolution.
Chair Miller and Board of Directors, we're gonna. You think that's the PowerPoint. So you have a short PowerPoint, which is an abbreviated version of what we shared at the budget workshop that we did in May. So we'll walk you through the budgets, each of the components, which are items 2 through 5. We'll, in the PowerPoint, we'll take it at one step. We'll go through the first resolution, which is 1904. Do a little presentation, stop, and allow you to ask questions, and then adopt, and then we'll move to the next one. So the presentation will flow through the next 4 items on the agenda. Okay. With this, we'll start. I'm going to ask Mark Wilson to start with rates and charges. Then I will move to the next one, which will be 1904.
Good morning. So, as we recall, we had our budget workshop on May 13th. We went through at that workshop really all the elements of what we as I like to think about the airport is the economic of the airport is really is the spending of things, primarily passenger travel. The price is set to our rate. So what we have done this year are you to that report and also primarily so what we have okay.
Let's go through the slide sheets for the public so that they can see what we have for rates and charges and what increases are happening and which I.
So on the commercial aviation, the revenue that we derive aircraft and that is for the aircrafts, either the landing fee and increase, in the similar. PA world that in the landing fee. In the terminal, we have both airlines and clinical chart companies and that in space come up in the terminal. And we have an increase. Bias, setting the agreement, we set the rates, this is what's and
And I think you skipped over, you went pretty quickly, but didn't identify a knee hanger rental. If we could just go back.
oh,
Slides to four.
More.
oh, I'm sorry, yes, and then I think that the, so we're not north of these box hangers, we've had discussions, many.
So with that, we'll entertain any questions you have on rates and charges.
That, the opposite hand, Director.
Here, just on that question, on that exact item. Say agreed upon, was this agreed upon?
I believe that to great, some people who are. So, thanks, and I believe they.
So I guess I'll just for the record say that we, these are new hangars with significantly under market. So out of respect for our GA community that's been with us for a long time, and we're stepping these up early until we get to market. Correct. Yeah. Thanks. Derek.
And fire suppression and,
That was, I mean, I wanted to, from the GA community, because I was benefactor of that. It's greatly appreciated, because that was a, yes, increase from what we were paying, and I think that we, well, I just want to say it's greatly appreciated. I did have a question, is that, if that's grandfathered into the tenants that actually made the transfer, but if someone came in, they would pay full rate, is that correct?
No, we have one rate set. This is the rate for the,
So the agreement, I thought was, I have, and I can send it, to you, but the agreement, that it does have the schedule, but I don't think that it differentiates. Meaning that
it has to be universal.
it does.
By federal law, we have to treat all of the tenants within a specific parameter the same. So we have to treat new and old the same.
Yeah.
So yes, it's specific
Okay.
to everybody.
It was greatly appreciated.
There's some goodwill.
Yeah. The GA landing fee, that we don't have a GA landing fee, under 6,000. Do we think that helps our fuel sales? Like with or more small planes are gonna come here, they're gonna land here, they're gonna get fuel or everything. It is unique, right? But in landing fees just everywhere to go.
I'm doing an evaluation on that.
Yeah, it would, I could only expect it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fuel sales, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If I could say this, the other big benefactor that increases fuel sales is they've really kept the rate low on fuel. In fact, I mean, the fuel here is, I think, $5.99 per gallon for 100 for 100 low lead, and I everywhere else I fly, I pay at least $1 more per gallon. Since
I echo what was said about the hangar. That was. It could find a lot of. I also would like to point out that. Of the fuel company, did we start collecting any fuel? Came in one day and said, when I've looked at all of this, we're not paying you anything. And we would like to pay you 5 cents a gallon. So that was an offer that came from them, telling us that we were missing a piece of revenue that we had overlooked. Years ago, he's been at 5 or 6, but that actually was an offer up from one of our tenants to us as a way for us to help another good kudos to the fuel company. And I really want to thank staff for listening to us about over there. It's a little confusing, and till we get it all straightened out, I think it's fair to keep it at the rate that.
Director Monty.
Yeah, no, I have nothing.
Thank you, for putting this together. Do we know what our
We do not. It's on their website, but we don't know exactly.
rates and charges affecting our employments? Have we done that math, yet? Cost per employment?
Yes, in the budget, the customer employment was, let's see, I don't have to go through the assumption, but,
Okay.
but it's only between pennies more than where we are. Because
Hey, I guess that's all the questions we have. Does any member of the public, press us on this item? In the virtual, want to raise your hand through the app? Raise your hand in your living room. I will not see you.
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay.
But if I could just add one thing, one of the questions that arose was related to one of the board members being a hangar tenant. Any service that is provided by a public agency, and the most common ones that you find are utilities like electricity, water, garbage, that sewer, those kind of rates. Anything that is offered to the general public at large does not disqualify you from voting on a matter. So, Director Gagliotti, there's no problem with you voting on this matter, even though you are a hangar tenant. Right. But because it's offered to anybody in the public who qualifies, and again, I say who qualifies because you have to have an airplane, but because it's open to the public, there is no conflict of interest.
Well, that might be being abundantly cautious.
I would much rather have an abundance of caution than wanton disregard.
Appreciate the question, Adam.
Mr. Chair, I would move to adopt resolution number before.
We have a first and second, roll,
Second by,
Director Monty.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Director Marty? Director Marty?
Aye.
Director Gagliotti?
Aye.
Director Pick?
Yes.
Director Leffel?
Yes.
And Chair Miller?
Yes.
PowerPoint for the next. Back and forth here a little bit.
That's no problem.
So next is resolution 1905. Salary ranges for this year. So the staff collectively, as a staff, have looked at everything that we're doing here, especially this year coming forward.
No. Going, hang on a second. This one's.
So everything going forward, and this year, the salary ranges have not changed from what we did last year. So it was on last year an analysis, and we believe that this year that the ranges still are appropriate. We have included the executive director position at the top as posted for your recruitment. And we are asking for just 2 new positions this year, one in the planning department and one in operations. This is an anticipation of both all the construction that we're doing, as well as the additional passengers that we're seeing. We really need to start to have both redundancy as well as additional hands on deck to be able to accomplish everything that we're doing this year with all of the different components of the safety enhancement program and construction. So with that, we just ask that you consider the salary ranges and the additional 2 staff that are proposed in your decision.
That's,
No, I just want to say, I think the Director Leffel and I have gone through this presentation 4 or 5 times now with all the different workshops in the Finance Committee. And again, I wanted to thank the staff for all the work that they've done on putting this together. And Mark, if you could just speak to how these salaries are competitive with airports of our size, considering the cost of living in the area.
Sure. So, last fiscal year, the airport company that I've used in the past. They went out and they did a salary survey based on as close they could match our positions to kind of like the data that's out there, and they helped us develop the ranges. I would say generally, we had our grades. And then we had a couple other positions where kind of the floor and the cap were kind of raised. Our compensation goals here are to be staffed with the market for both equity and also for no.
Thank you.
And just as a note, probably next fiscal year.
No further question, okay?
Director Lip.
I have no questions, and just a couple of comments. I also think that it's always important to acknowledge the fact that we also are one of the few organizations that still pay Social Security and employees, they get an extra benefit on. It's one of those things, I think, Mr. Shields brought up the fact that people do need to have a safety zone for retirement, and I think that we do a pretty good job here of providing that. Also, that we've got their program makes it not just the salary, but also what to me. And it just this is a question: which of these, and ignorance. I know that we had a long discussion a few years ago about on the field. Which of these people are the people who are here, like on the weekends or after hours?
So today we have both operations staff and maintenance staff here on the weekends and after hours, with the addition of additional operations staff we'll be able to expand those hours that we're able to cover.
So what kind of hours? I know maintenance is here because I fly in and out and I see maintenance, but I never know who's here. Like if a pilot was flying in, the lights didn't turn on. Is there a person that they call?
Yeah.
Or do they just, no one answers the phone and they go back?
Our operations staff work on an on-call basis. So we're here until 5 o'clock, or if there's something happening until that event takes place. And after that, they can be contacted by tenants via on-call or tower via on-call, and they can come back in if necessary. Same thing if there were to be a severe maintenance issue, then we have a maintenance on-call as well who comes in after hours.
So someone is regularly assigned to have that duty. So it is a duty that they're assigned to, and they have the phone that's available. 7 days a week, 8 to 5, someone is here. And then beyond that, they have the call, they have the phone, and they answer that no matter what hour of the evening. And they Traycon as well too. Everybody
Sunday, someone is here.
8 to 5, correct? Yes. And that's both maintenance and operations staff as well as custodials.
You know how that stacks up with other airports as far as flights or a lot of early flights, that there's nobody that is, that can make a decision that's physically here.
I'd say that it varies across the environment, the aviation environment, what people have. I've seen both. I've seen on call, I've seen people available 24 hours. So it all depends.
What's appearing a little off salary schedule, but it just came to light a couple months ago, so I just wondered how we were doing it. It might be something we want to talk about going forward.
Want to refresh my memory, you. Finance committee have reviewed all the items 2 through 6, and you guys are in concurrence with it. They're taking their input.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the project support specialist, have we identified that person?
We currently have, so we went out, we've had the opening for a temporary receptionist slash assistant in this fiscal year's budget. So we recruited and have someone that is training right now as a part-time employee. We will be posting this, and if they're interested, which we hope they are, then they would be potentially eligible to have starting pretty quickly.
This is the swing person between, to help basically your multi roles, right? Is that correct?
It is, it's a person, so project support specialist will take over a lot of the paperwork that the staff in the project team are doing.
Yeah.
You know, making sure we have all of our documents, all of our certified payroll reports, all of reviewing invoicing, et cetera. So this person is going to be a support to the whole project team.
Right.
To allow the project managers to spend more time out in the field, correct? And to take some of the duties I was doing
Yeah.
in oversight off as well.
Was that when we were having this about this person, this person is not actually managing the project, like they're not, you're not shedding your PM stuff.
No, I am not directly to that person.
So, is that also one of the concerns with you, the new role and everything? Is that
Getting my feet underneath,
yeah,
so,
exactly.
and I'm not counting, but 12 days. Sorry. So I, really getting through the events that we had, and now budget, starting audit. There's a lot of moving parts going on that are not regular day to day, but annual in pieces. So really evaluating that, and I do have the ability to bring in contracted services if necessary to take that over.
That's where I was going, because I mean, when we asked you to come, I mean, the board is unanimous in its support in giving or the support that you needed. I thought that was the support, that person that's administrative, which is huge, but the PM part is what I thought you might.
I would be under contract service. So that then when this position as interim is.
Right, thank you.
Member of the public wish to address us on this item? See anybody viewing us remotely? Raise your hand electronically if you wish to comment on this.
Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So I will move that we adopt resolution number 1905, resolution authorizing improving fiscal year 2020.
Very good. Okay, we have a first by Director Pick, a second by Director Lefkow. Can we have a-
Director Amati.
Aye.
Director Gagliardi. Director Pick.
Yes.
Director Leffel. Chair Miller.
Yes. Okay, moving right along, here we are at item number
4. Yes. Operating budget. So based on the rates and charges salary schedule that we just approved um, and to the overall budget, both revenue and expense. So Mark will take this.
Let's talk about, so I would say in broad strokes, this budget is fairly unchanged from what we would need at the, workshop. On the assumptions, the only pricing came out on a year that affects those uses of the airport where in our 10 leases that are put it. It is April CPI. That was really perfect change.
Opt-in higher or?
Well, it's just lower than what, so when we had the budget meeting, yeah, the workshop last published 12-month period was the 12-month period, February, that was 2.7.
Okay.
Now, for the April print of CPI, for but again, that's year-over-year change. So, you know,
This is where Chair Miller, you had asked about the CPE. This is the slide that has that on.
right, when the CPE is projected. So the operating budget, I'll just take you through this kind of just broad strokes because there were some small adjustments that were made. I would do a 14,961, 14,935. Yeah. So that minor increases in the fee. Expenses, we did in the manager controlled, where there was discussion of the workshop about putting in the budget, workshop and overall, workshop, we were able to be out on or,
I would, Mark, there was also an increase in police contract service.
right, and there was a small, jump ahead a little bit, but at the last budget workshop, the estimate that I had received from the city was at us $1,466,500. And since then, their calculation is with basically budget, take off the UAL, we pay half for $45,000. Okay. And then I just go through the detail here. Very small changes here. And operating expenses, wages and benefits of contract does. And
Okay. Uh, from the board, we will start.
Chair, no questions, just want to thank you all the hard work. Yet another great budget development process. I think what I would say for the record is that we're in a certainty and turbulence, and I think that the assumptions that underpin the budget are reasonable. Not overly cautious, but certainly on the cautious side in estimations. I think that's important. Significant capital program in the history of your work. So thanks for the great work and to the finance committee for that. Thank you, sir. Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the work that you guys done and taking us through that budget process to make this today very, very neat.
Changes, and it's a tight budget, but it's made it years they've not been off the mark, and every year I mean, so I really appreciate it. We'll bottom line where it needs to be.
Yeah, in the finance committee, this past month, I did have a discussion with Mark about the updated finance structure that we've been discussing for the capital project, and whether putting additional cash reserves of ours into that structure would have a significant impact on the budget, and the response was that it would be minimal, and that's accounted for here. So just wanted to share that was something that we talked about. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that after our last board meeting, there was some discussion about an analysis of how much revenue the airport brings in per passenger who passes through the facility. And I went through and I looked at the numbers over the past year. Very rough analysis. And there is not a linear, obviously, relationship between the number of passengers and the amount of money that the terminal is making, because it's generated from all these different variable sources. I think, however, for rough approximations, it comes out to about $21.46. The terminal revenues is $21.46 per passenger. I'll share that analysis with all of you, and share it with staff so that they can take a look and provide any feedback that they had. And I think they came to some similar conclusions, that not a linear relationship, so that if you were to increase 500,000 passengers, you wouldn't see 100,000 times 21.46. However, that approximation with the standard deviation of $1.36 does roughly cover 2/3 of the months. And so I think for our purposes, when we're thinking about trying to increase passengers and what that would do for revenues, I think an approximation of 2150 is a pretty good kind of ballpark number for us. When we're thinking about what it costs to bring more passengers in and what the benefit to our bottom line is. So I'll share both the analysis that I did with all of you, as well as the responses that we received from staff.
I noticed under our landing fee, we got a couple airlines that didn't pay anything, but you're gonna be discussing that in item number. That was part of our incentive program. That $11.92, do you know where that places us with some of our competition? First call for employment.
Well, we believe that's certainly very competitive.
Sounds good.
And then we'll be getting to a small discussion on air service later, but my bound is on, in talking with the airlines at Jumpstart, they said we're very
Good.
We're very good and they're very comfortable with what our rates and charges are.
That's good to hear. Any public comment? The boardroom? Don't see any. Any?
Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
I'll entertain the motion.
I would move we adopt resolution number 1906 of the operating budget of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District for fiscal year 2020.
Okay, oh, great. Okay, we have a first by Director Level and second by Director Pick. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Amati.
Aye.
Director Gagliardi.
Aye.
Director Pick.
Yes.
Director Leffel. Chair Miller.
Yes. Keynote 7.
Capital budgets.
Was helping.
We're just queuing it up here. Started for you. So the proposed capital improvement program and budget. So most of the projects are projects that we're carrying forward from ones that have been approved either in this past fiscal year's budget that aren't complete and will be completed or will continue to move towards completion over the next year. There are 3 new projects here. The project for ARC transition and ARC vehicle remediation. We will be, as you know, so our facility went online in October of 2023. And we have a foam tank that has never been filled. So we've been waiting for the ability to purchase new foam and waiting for a truck to be able to do that so that then it'll be a new training and completely different way to operate for our personnel. This is a project to both transition the foam and the vehicles because we do anticipate taking possession of our new vehicle here in the fall. So that's already a project that was moved forward. It should be going into production here any day in the October, November timeframe. So this project will be to support the purchase of the foam for that truck as well as the backup foam. In the Reauthorization Act, there is language about cost to recoup for this. Hasn't been no guidance yet on it, but it will. We are told it will be a reimbursable program. So even if we spend the money now, we'll still be able to ask for the once the allocations are made. So this is a budget to again transition over, but also can be eligible for reimbursement in the future once FAA has the program in place. Second would be a CFC funded potential program. And that is ready return lot. The existing return lot over here needs some tender loving care. New line, bit of divots out there, so an improvement on the lot that exists for the rental cars, as well as planning for the future and relocating another ready return lot that will be next to the new terminal once that terminal complex. This project is, anticipated to be years, but would be one phase in this fiscal year, which is the existing lot, and then in fiscal year 27 for. The last is a district-only funded project, and it's some improvements to Sky Park Drive. It would be from the Del Monte Aviation to the Sky Park Drive location. We have incrementally been improving our roads and the surfaces of our roads, and so that would be the next phase. And then for this fiscal year, and then following on to that, Sky Park all the way to the cul-de-sac in front of Monterey Jet Center would be next year's project. So again, incrementally finishing up our roads and surfaces here on the south side of the airport, as they are our responsibility to take care of. So with that, those are the capital improvement projects moving forward and the new ones, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
I would also note for the board that, we've run.
Okay, very good. Let's start. Director level.
Well, I just want to tell staff I really appreciate the way it's laid out this year. I think it's very understandable. We've changed this thing probably 15 years. But I also want to thank you for getting out way ahead on the phone issue, because we know it. And I think it's good that we're taking the lead on it and preparing, knowing that it's absolutely it reimburses, that's great. If they don't, at least we did the right thing for the community.
Your body.
No questions or comments.
Progressive on this item. How about any member viewing us remotely? Please raise your hand electronically if you want to comment on this.
Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
No move.
We have a first by Director Pick, a second by Director Leffel.
Director Amati.
Aye.
Director Gagliardi. Director Pick.
Yes.
Director Leffel.
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Thank you. Let's hit another one. The fiscal year 2026 professional services. 3,000.
Yes, thank you. Before we get there, let us just do a recap, and then we'll go into that one item. So we just want to recap our cash flow for the fiscal year of all these things that you just approved, as well as the plan of finance for the safety enhancement program. Again, just so that we are clear to the public on how all of this is being funded, and then we will talk about this last approval.
To go back. You
So, so our plan of the one last. Somewhat. Have the ticket financing that we will be pursuing. Same. will happen in the future, in timing to be determined based on, what the events are. See the funds, and also, I think it also is a function of, but generally, we never. And so when I look at the cash flow projection, assuming that year, subsequent to that time, the $14 million EPP grant was. So in this cash flow, I'm assuming that those will be. So stroke, estimates for this year is a little more. So the most likely scenario is two kind of simultaneous equations here. To be alone. On 50 alone, basically, we have to have. So there's going probably more. Then we'll close on the dollars on the. Interim period as well, we have a $23 million discretionary grant. And I'm never quite sure what the word is. Approved, awarded, also. This scenario that we may get up to. Case, you basically through grants will have enough. I didn't count on that in this cash flow, so I basically said discretionary money, so I assumed a borrowing under Barclays. And just so it's clear for the public, the Barclays facility has not been approved and forward ones kind of be where those things are. Similarly, and sort of fun. Also, in particular, in Excel, it's going to be subject to. Cash flow here is basically assuming that the terminal program what we will spend this year will be financed either through grant and financing. The exact mix of those components. Yep.
This to the last one, I think the preliminary, and this is really just to, we've got our budget now approved, but there will be a lot of other approvals coming forward. The pieces fall into place on all of these components so really kind of setting it up for the rest of this year as we start to move into it. We'll be bringing quite a few of these forward for approval. All right. Yeah, so we can. Yep. So in front of you, you have a request for approval, and this is in relationship to our finance policy. So on the books, we currently have a finance policy that only allows for up to $30,000 a year expenditures to specific entities. well, a lot of, so in front of you are a number of contracts that have been approved in the past prior to some of you sitting here on the dais. So that's why we want to make sure that this is clear, that these are contracts. Some of them are annual, some of them have, and you can see from the document, some of them have a time for renegotiation. But we wanted to make sure that we get the approval to spend above and beyond that $30,000, which is incorporated into the budget plan that you just approved. But get that approval so that it's clear that these are all approved to go above and beyond that $30,000 threshold that currently exists. I would suggest in the future, we start looking at our finance policy. Quite old, $30,000 is a pretty low threshold in today's dollars. This was written over 10 years ago, so it might be something that we can bring back in the future to revisit our finance policy. But currently we don't have that ability. So for this fiscal year, these are the contracts that we have anticipate will be spending over the 30,000. So consider approval of that.
Nothing to approve on this one, correct?
You should have, I think it's in your budget book is what I'm being told. So the last
Is approval.
it's an approval
It's tab 6.
and it's tab 6 in your budget book.
So you're asking us to approve the $30,000 limit, or we?
No, we're asking you to approve the 30,000, these contracts in tab 6 of your
Right.
budget of 30 or over. So they will be $30,000. So, and again, those costs are identified in our expense reports or our expense budget. But this is just one further step to make the approval official that we will spend over there on these specific professional services
But
or
you,
utilities.
but it's also staff's recommendation that we rate.
Correct. Yes.
Do you have a number in mind?
Not yet. We will do some research.
Okay. Okay, let's open it up for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, how about remotely? If you want to comment, raise your hand electronically.
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay, let's. Question, Ramadi.
Yeah, so, Director Lupple and I looked over all of these in the finance committee, and there weren't any that, jumped out at us, and I'll say that, you know, just to clarify, there's no new contracts here, this is all, already,
Yeah, and I really want to thank Chris, just, she came in and I was like, you know what, we need to look at this. And I think that some of these, you know, we'll probably want to break down a little bit and find it, but we'll do that and bring it back to the board as necessary. But it is a big part of our budget when you look at all of these and how they just keep rolling along, and they're line items in the budget, but we don't know where those line items are all going. So I thought it was important that we all see it. Hunger have been on the approval process of some of these, but some of you have not ever seen any of these contracts and know what we're getting from them. So anyway, Chris, thank you for putting it together. I know it was okay, now we'd like this too, but I do think it's important just for seeing, for everybody to see what's going on. And we will talk in finance and bring back a recommendation of what we think the new signing authority should be based on
good. Thank you, Director Gagliano.
Just curious, do you think that there's any need for like an interim to the interim, like authority, like something else might come up in the short term that we could give today, that signing authority above some number? Not full well, we're gonna come back with the full recommendation from the finance committee, but do you foresee anything that you're gonna need to?
No, we'll handle them, as you'll see in the next couple items, as resolutions.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything, that gives us pause, that we can't handle in our regular meetings as resolutions, as we've been doing forever. So no, I think we're good.
Questions, like I said, on those two options for Planet Finance. I think I saw that the debt service is included in budget, meaning that if Barclays goes through, we can cover the debt service.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when I did the budget and I looked at the interest expense, I did have about $1 million.
Yeah.
Per year. That's a very conservative.
And we don't use it. What is just go back into
Okay, thank you, Director Gagliano. No questions. And I invite her, I'll entertain a motion to,
second.
first by Director Level, second by Director Pick, roll call please.
Director Marty,
Aye.
Director Gagliardi, Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Level.
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. No. Number 18.
1808 is a resolution approving a professional service agreement with Aviatrix Communications. So this is one of the ones that has not been approved by the board and started using Aviatrix this past year in marketing about halfway through the year to support our safety enhancement program. And if you follow along with our Metamorphosis Mondays, they're the ones that help together that detail of that goes to Amanda and she makes it pretty and puts it out on our social media pieces. So that's a taste of what they can do. They also were the ones that helped groundbreaking for us, knowing our staff was very stretched at that time with all of these things that were going on. They were really instrumental in making sure they were writing talking points, press releases, things like that for us, that we at least giving us drafts and we could work from, so we didn't have to do everything from bottom up. So you got to experience the detail that they provide. They have a large team that has different pieces. We've used them for a lot of our graphic design as well. But going forward for this fiscal year, with our social media specialists going out on maternity leave and me pivoting over to this interim position, we need more support. So we will increase the support. They'll be helping more with our social media posts on a daily basis in the interim of both of us not being available, with some guidance from myself. But again, we will be using him for the full year for the Metamorphosis communication as a retainer, and then the social media management as a retainer. And if we need additional help with content, website updates and or marketing, commercials, etc., that's the being made per diem basis. And I'd ask that you consider this resolution 1908 to provide that support for our communications and marketing for this fiscal year.
Director Pick at 9:19 had to leave the meeting with an excused departure. As we know, he works in the graduate school. They're having their graduation today, so there's some work. So
And we'll see some of them flying out of here when they get here.
Yes.
All their stuff.
Welcome. In flames. Okay, public comment. Any member of the public wishing to talk to us on this item? Please, step forward. Don't see any member of the public viewing us remotely that would like to comment. Please raise your hand.
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay. Staff question, Director Amati, do you have any?
I just wanted to share that for this item 7, 8, and 9 on the agenda, these are all items that came for the finance committee this month, and the finance committee was making the recommendation on each that we approve them. On this item, I just wanted to share that we did discuss this one specifically in finance, and Director Morello reminded us that, you know, this is the type of thing that would have been a concern of hers in taking on this role, and that this is exactly the type of support that she was hoping that we would approve for her to be able to do this role in the ability in which she would want to. I did have a quick question. In terms of the social media posts, they may be generating, but you would still have final say before anything went out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. That was my only comments.
Okay. Director Leffel.
I have no comments, thank you.
No comments.
And just a comment, I thought they did a great job. Planning her to see the fan at some point, she grabbed a couple of them, so. Hey,
A resolution approving a professional services agreement with EDA.
Second.
okay, we have a first by Director.
Director Amati,
Aye.
Director Gagliardi,
Aye.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
and Chair Miller.
Yes. Passes. Let's move on to item number 8.
So this NG is one of the approvals that you just gave in our contract services. So they are under contract when we install the solar array on an annual basis to maintain and watch things and watch for issues with the solar array. It's been identified that a couple of the rows of the solar panels aren't tracking correctly. So the manufacturer will provide the parts. It's under the contract that we have to upgrade those non-operational trackers at no cost, but they need to be installed. That matches and works with the array that we have now, but to fully realize all of the energy capture from solar that we want, we would suggest we need to upgrade these trackers that are not working perfectly. Resolution 1909.
Okay, any from the public wanting to address us on this item? Seeing none. Any member of the public viewing us remotely, raise your hand electronically.
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
And a tracker is just a device that allows the panel to follow the sun, right?
Yes, they rotate just in one direction. They rotate up and down. That's it. They don't go side to side. But yes, that's what it is. The tracker component follow the sun.
Okay. On this and Director Deck, any questions?
Yeah, I didn't see, what's the model of the tracker, the brand of the tracker?
I don't.
Yeah, I couldn't see it in the thing. I mean, there are basically two big, there's Next Tracker and Array, those are the two. I'm kind of curious which one we have out there.
I'll get that back to you. It was
Okay.
put in 2017. So
Yeah.
don't remember.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Director Level.
So it's important that we keep these as efficient as possible, so. It's at my house, they do. Hired, so they have to be worked on every once in a while, so I think it's good that they're replacing it. I'm appreciative of that in the contracts.
Director Amati.
That just. Finance, like we had asked, what the expected life cycle was for these parts. Were you able to get a response? Director, yeah, I might actually.
Well, no, I mean,
Hey, here.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I asked is that to that point, when in 2017, there was this mad rush to put stuff out there that never been kind of life cycle tested. And so there are failures that are happening, and this is kind of fixing and fixing that will last longer. The expectation when we were first putting these things, at least 25 years, but we were at time we
We'll have NG put together
Yeah.
a memo on what we have and just a reminder of everything and expectations.
just because of the timing we won't put this in.
So that we can be prepared to understand for the rest of them out there when we might be thinking that those would need to be replaced as well.
Very
So, but I have no other questions.
Okay. Have you more information to come on this? I entertain a motion to approve.
Resolution number 1909, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of funds for repair of the airport solar array faulty trackers by NG Services US Inc. I would move that we adopt.
Director Leffel, seconded by Director Amati. Can we have a roll call?
Director Marty,
Aye.
Director Gagliardi, Director Leffel,
Yes,
and Chair Miller.
Yes. Okay, another unanimous. Let's go to item number 9.
It's a contract amendment with Laser Consultants of California, who we have contracted with under an RFQ to do the safety investment program, certified payroll monitoring. So this piece, we've previously approved the monitoring for the ramp that's currently under construction. The land side was approved as well, and now this would be for the terminal construction. So it is our federal requirements to review and make sure they meet federal requirements. So, again, outside service to help us with that. It is a very tedious and very detailed because a lot of those things are changing from day to day or year to year. So they do a very in-depth review and give us a monthly report. That report needs to come where we actually approve the process that we have in place to make sure we meet our federal requirement. I'd ask that you consider this contract amendment with the related so that we will meet our ones in our way.
Thank you. Let's open for the public in the audience wishing to comment. Ryan, this is right in your wheelhouse. You don't want to say anything on this one?
No, thank you.
Oh, sure. How about in remotely? Any member wishing to address us? Raise your hand electronically. Don't see anybody, so questions, Director Amati, do you have any questions?
This was one that we had discussed in finance as well. I brought up a concern that I've heard from someone in the construction community about this specific vendor, but I'm happy to share that staff has nothing but good things to say about Richard and that he comes out to do on-site inspections and So because of that, out of finance, we decided to recommend for approval.
Okay.
On that vein, he has worked for us multiple times in the past, and we have never had a clawback on any of our grants that he has helped us monitor this particular piece of it. So how I see it, as long as we haven't had a problem with the grant, he's obviously doing his job and doing it right, so we did approve it. Technical.
Director Gaglione.
No question.
Approve the contract amendment with Labor Consultants of California Inc. Labor monitoring services for the project.
I'll second.
Okay, a first by Director Level, a second by Director Amati.
Director Amati,
Aye.
Director Gagliardi, Director Lepo,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. So item number 10, we have somebody, would be appropriate to take a break. You need time to, this.
We're good. We just have to bring up the PowerPoint and Mike's on, but if you would like a break, Mike Bond's on remotely. If you'd like a break, we'd be happy to entertain it.
Does my board need a break at this time? Okay, we will plow on.
So, in our discussions with, at Jumpstart and Air Service, so Mike's gonna walk us through a bit of a PowerPoint, kind of give us a summary of Jumpstart, give us a summary of Air Service and where we're at, and then talk a little bit about an air carrier incentive program. But, back through and in conversations with Mike as I'm getting my feet underneath me, that we had in the past a formal resolution and program, which we've provided to you. But you can see that this one did sunset. And even if it hadn't, if it hadn't by your decision, it would have by the federal requirements. So FAA on December 7th of 2023 published new guidance on air carrier incentive policies. So we would have needed to review this anyway, given that FAA has updated their policy and their and would have needed to update ours in relationship to that. With that, I'm going to ask Mike just to kind of walk us through, and then we want this to be an interactive discussion when we get to the incentive policy, because we want some guidance and some parameters to start to put one together, because we believe it's important that we do that. Mike, good morning.
Hello, all. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay. Real quickly, my name is Mike Bown, the air service consultant for the airport. I have been working with the airport a few years now, and I've been there on site at least once, if not twice, and I've met most of you, probably not all of you. Next slide. Going to try to make this fairly quick. We've got about 7 real slides. A couple of which I will go through with a little more detail. Some of those, I think the picture tells the whole story and you'll know it. The focus is going to be, I think, initially on the industry update. And with that, why don't we, next slide. From an industry perspective, the first bullet kind of says it all. Uncertainty is the word of the year. Economic uncertainty specifically. This doesn't just apply, obviously, to the airline industry, but pretty much any industry in the world right now. I will say, though, that the airline industry is more volatile. We deal with discretionary dollars, whether it's for business travel or particularly leisure travel. And when there's a little bit of a hiccup, the airline industry typically can be very volatile. Specifically in terms of what the industry is seeing right now, leisure travel in the economy section of the aircrafts is relatively weaker than it has been. What happened was it was February, March, we certainly saw it slip. It has improved of late, but it's behind last year's levels. From a premium travel perspective, and when I say premium travel, I mean if you're a Delta flyer, which I guess you don't have Delta, but I am, so I'll use that as the example. Economy comfort has been relatively strong, and the upfront sections in terms of business travel, first class travel has also been quite strong. So it's basically the higher end consumers are still there for the airline industry. There has not been a ton of change, and most of the impact has been in the back of the bus, as they call it. International has also been pretty healthy, unless you're talking about Canada. What they're seeing on the international side is that most of the international flying from the United States is driven by the U.S. origin market. And again, that's higher end consumers remain strong. There has been a noticeable decline in international origin traffic coming into the United States, but because most of the traffic originates in the U.S., that has more than offset it. I would say, talking about Monterey from this perspective, you're kind of playing to the strengths of the market. From a leisure perspective, you're more focused, as you all know, on the higher end leisure traveler, and that has played well, I think, on a relative basis for Monterey. And I actually would argue longer term, that'll be a very good place to be. Some specifics here in the airline side, which is what's happened. Southwest is already in kind of a state of volatility, if you will, and a hedge fund has come in. A lot of changes are taking place. They're telling people they're not growing again to 2027. Spirit Airlines has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, come out of it. Their capacity is down sharply in 2025. They're also indicating no growth until 2027. Along more of the mainline airlines, Delta now is only seeing 1% growth in the second half of 25. That was a few points higher prior to some of the demise in the economy class bookings. Longer term, Delta is saying they're going to grow in line with basically GDP growth or planned GDP growth. So if the economy slips, so will that. United has been the one really standing out of late. As you can see, they're looking at 6.4% growth in 2025 on the seat basis. That's about 5 to 6 times the competitors they deal with, mostly that being Delta and American. And they're also indicating relative outsized growth going forward. They are certainly the most optimistic of the big airlines in the United States right now. Alaska, their growth is limited in the near term. They're still integrating the Hawaiian Airlines acquisition, and they've got a couple airplanes on the ground due to engine issues. They're generally fairly upbeat going forward. They're going to be, again, more limited because of the Hawaiian acquisition in the near term, but in the not too distant future, I think you'll see more growth from them. And finally, Breeze Airlines is a relative new startup from, I don't know how long ago, 3 to 4 years ago. They're somewhat the industry darling right now. They're taking 1 new aircraft per month. So among all airlines, they're far and away the fastest growing, although in the majors and the big guys, United is the fastest growing. Again, and I want to stress, and Chris said that earlier, if you have any questions or comments as we go through this, please jump in. If there's not, we'll go to the next couple slides, will be a little quicker. You all know about this. You've been seeing very good traffic growth the last number of years. Versus 2018, you're up about almost 8.5% on a compounded annual basis. Obviously very strong. The Monterey experience is what the industry or what air travelers are kind of looking for right now. New experiences. And I can tell you as a Midwesterner, I don't think, well, I think the Monterey, Pebble Beach, Carmel, the area is very well known along the West Coast. I don't think that's the case in the eastern half of the United States. And tied to that, I think there'll be more growth in the long term. Next slide, please. Most of the growth has been driven by American Airlines over the last few years. That was the new DFW service that I think was in late 2017. And more recently, they've been adding a lot of Phoenix service. So they've been most of the growth. United was somewhat stagnant until recently, as was Alaska Airlines. But that's starting to change. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, that'll be 2 slides from now. In terms of where is the growth taking place, these are what I call O&D or origin and destination markets. These are where people are actually going. So as an example, if you're flying from MRY, connecting in Denver and your final destination is Minneapolis, St. Paul, on this chart, that would be the O&D would be Monterey to Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is the number 8 market. And we measure that from a network airline perspective. We look at daily passengers. So just to give you a couple notes here so you can see how this reads, your number 1 O&D market is San Diego. A little over 91 passengers fly there daily, which is up almost 50% versus 2016. And it's these kind of numbers that are generating the traffic growth from an in-plane passenger perspective you've been seeing. As you look down the list, you're seeing some pretty massive growth in a lot of these markets. And that's frankly because as you've added new service, particularly on an east-west basis, specifically that being Denver and Dallas, seats are available to connect to these places where before most people would just, and they still do for the most part, but particularly, a few years ago, almost everybody was driving to either San Jose or San Francisco and jumping on an airplane there. So you can see the response has been pretty dramatic, and there's some big growth numbers here. And I expect these types of trends you're going to see going forward. This is what I was referring to last slide. I got ahead of myself. You're starting to see some changes in 2025. You're still looking up pretty good through August on a seat capacity basis, and that's on a calendar year basis. But the carrier mix is changing. American's basically flat year over year through August. And you're starting to see, and you started to see this last year, United's starting to grow quite a lot. I think that's also going to continue. Alaska's also adding some more capacity, and the timing's harder to predict than for Alaska, but I think you're also going to see them grow. I think you're going to see a changing carrier mix profile going forward. And if you look out into the fall of this year, I looked at September just yesterday. United, based on future schedules, and September is kind of a final schedule at this point. It could change a little bit, but it should be what's flown. United will be your number one airline come September, and I think there's no looking back at that. We talked about when I've been out there before talking longer term forecasts, shorter term forecasts. I was always pretty optimistic United at some point would come back to this market. It was a function of when their aircraft deliveries took hold and when some of the shortages in terms of pilots in particular got fixed. But that's the case now. And you saw earlier we talked about United's going to see pretty significant growth coming forward system wide on a relative basis. And you're going to benefit from that, in my opinion. Next slide. So this is a review of our recent airline meetings. We got kind of the highlights on this screen, and Chris Whitney, please jump in if I miss something. United, we're expecting United to add more Denver capacity next spring/summer, and I think the following year you'll see even more capacity. I think initially probably see an additional frequency, then you're going to start seeing upgauging, in my opinion, the following year. That could change, that could go in reverse of what I just indicated, but they're pretty firm on growing. They're looking now pretty, I think I'm fairly optimistic on Chicago in the summer of 26. Now, let me take you through kind of a history of events here over the last few months, because this has changed recently. We had one of the key network planners, Sam Levy, and you're probably familiar with this, I'm guessing, but I'll go through it anyway. Sam was on site, I want to say a couple months ago, 2 to 3 months ago. He's from California originally, had been to the area, but I don't think he was that well acclimated in the area. We made quite an impression. He was on site. Airport staff did an excellent job. They're actually did great. And we had Visit Carmel representatives and also Monterey CBB. It went very well. It was subsequent to that meeting that, and Sam's subsequent response, that we started to get optimistic about this happening, that we're detailing here on United, and that the conference that was just reiterated by other members of his team. Number 2 is Alaska. The timing on this is more difficult to ascertain. Alaska's had a lot of network planning changes. That's a department that makes route planning decisions. Changes lately. They brought in 3 new guys from all places of United Airlines. So there's going to be some changes coming to the good. They've indicated that they plan to bring Seattle up to 2 times daily at some point. I think that'll probably be seasonal to start, recognizing that they're not serving Jan Feb right now nonstop. So I think their plans are to make that year round and eventually growing to 2 times daily service. And then at some point in the not too distant future, whether it's next summer, the following summer, or the summer after that, I think you'll start seeing seasonal Portland service, and then they'll go from there. That would obviously build upon their service they have today to San Diego. They upgraded from 1 to 2 times a day, which is one of the reasons you saw the growth earlier. In talking with Alaska, I think they see the Monterey growing somewhat the way they grew Sonoma a few years ago, and that's consistent. What they're talking about is consistent with what they're saying here is consistent with what Sonoma saw. So I think the first 2 airlines here are pretty good shape. American Airlines, I think you're going to see them kind of stabilize around current levels. I don't think we're going to see a lot more growth from them, and hence the reason I think United will start taking share. If there's any growth from American, it's going to be going mostly over Phoenix on that shorter flight segment that is more economical. Probably not at Dallas. I think Dallas is going to stay where it is currently. Finally, Breeze. Breeze, we are one of 7 new airports they're looking at right now. I think that they said, and Chris Whitney, jump in if I misrepresent this. I think they're looking at a September startup, or I'm sorry, they're making it a fall announcement, and probably I think they said it would start in early September. So we've got a good chance here. We're about 50-50, I would argue. They're looking at Orange County service. I think what they're doing is they've got some landing and takeoff slots there, and they're trying to maximize those by bringing a plane in early in the day, and then it would take off late at night. I think they're looking at 2 times daily service. To me, this is a kind of a big one because of the growth they have going forward. This is a way they would tip their toe in the water. If it works well, we would see additional capacity from Breeze. They're kind of the industry darling right now. Because of what they're looking at, I'm guessing of these other 7 markets. I'm guessing these are also in close proximity to Orange County. So what I mean by that is, and this is a guess, they haven't indicated this to me. I would guess if I were them, I would be looking at a market like Sonoma. I might be looking at a market like San Luis Obispo. There's a couple more that I'm not sure what they are because again, they don't have a lot of service on the West Coast right now, but that's my hunch as to what they're looking at. And they have a good product. They're not like an Allegiant of the world. They have 3-class service. They have first kind of a bit economy comfort, for lack of a better term, in economy. They price lower, but they have a nice product. That's the summary of Jumpstart. I don't, Chris, did you want to add anything here?
I would, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I would add, I think on all of these, they were good conversations, but the industry, as Mike said at the beginning, the industry can change. So
Yes.
while they were extremely positive, anything can change tomorrow.
Yes.
Ree's conversation, of looking at our air carrier incentive program, they're the ones that are asking. So new carrier into the market is asking, what do we have? And one of the things we don't have we don't have the ability to do the minimum fees. We can do fee waivers. And that we'll get into the next slide, but kind of setting up a bit of why we started to look at this, as well as the fact that FAA has updated their policy. But we need to see what do we have to offer, and especially if we want to compete with the San Luis Obispos, especially slow, they have a huge backing because they're a county-owned airport for minimum revenue guarantees. So the county puts a lot of their TOTs into supporting their service. We don't have that ability. That doesn't mean that we can't compete.
Yeah, let me add to that a little bit, and then we'll go into the incentive program, and we can have more of a discussion, I guess. It depends on the airline how important incentives are. They all expect a minimum level of incentives, like the waiving of the landing fees with a new route. But I would tell you, carriers like American, Delta, and United, the big guys, they don't put a lot of emphasis in terms on revenue guarantees that Chris just mentioned. They are looking for markets that are viable and just don't put a lot of emphasis on it. Carriers like Breeze put more on it, in part because of their startup focus and more on cash flow driven, if you will, just because of the size of the airline. And now I want to reiterate, they don't pick markets on that, but what can happen is your place in line can change. So as an example, I mentioned a minute ago for Breeze, they're looking at roughly 7 markets of which they're going to pick roughly 3 or 4 for new service. They might move an airport up if they offer a revenue guarantee on the list, if that in fact is what happens. So that's where, we'll talk about revenue guarantees there in general. Back now on the incentive program, this is very much a very first start. I did this recently. Chris and Whitney have barely had a time to digest it. So it's very early. I think we're looking more for guidance today. When I built this, my thinking was I had specific services in mind that it would apply to. So you're looking at the first one, that's for currently served markets, targeting a 50% plus increase in seat capacity. My thinking behind that was what I indicated earlier in terms of what Alaska was thinking in terms of Seattle and what Denver was thinking in terms of United. I was looking at this as kind of a tease for them to get their interest. I certainly am not going to fall on a sword for it, but it's kind of a first shot, if you will. On the rates and charges, the waiving of landing fees, the FAA gives up to 2 years, but, or I'm sorry, 3 years. But in terms of the new service in general, we're looking at 2 seasons or, 2 years. And in terms of the number one there, the 50, the increases on existing service, it would be limited to 1 year. I would tell you in terms of additional capacity in currently served markets, guys like United are not going to put a ton of emphasis on it. They expect some help, but not a ton. And again, I won't, you can read what's on the screen here, or you have a piece of paper in front of you. I know it's kind of small, but in general, though, these are kind of the things we're looking for. We probably will make this more route specific and put some more fences around some of the wording going forward. But this was kind of a first foray. There was some on. I will say, in terms of other markets, this is all over the board. I have some markets I represent who have as many as 3 minimum revenue guarantees going at once and totaling in the millions of dollars. I have other ones are similar to Monterey. They have nothing except they'll waive landing fees and kind of a small marketing piece. So this is all over the board. At some point, maybe I'll supply you when we have another call or meeting. I can supply you a little bit more detail in that regard, but these things are all over the board. After saying all that, for Uniteds, the Americans and Deltas, from my experience, they don't put a ton of credence in that because if the market's not going to work, they don't care about taking the cash and leaving 6 months later. Breeze will put more emphasis on it than some of the other ULCCs, but even then, the market makes it meet. So, Chris, I'll turn it back to you if you want to get more into a Q&A here or what have you.
Sure, maybe you can turn yours off, but FAA's guidance does allow for up to 36 months, but we're not recommending 36. We don't believe that that's necessary. And I think what we were hearing was the 24 months would be especially for non-daily, if it's not daily service. And so again, we can set the parameters however we want them to be. We just have to define them. We'll have to notice them to the public at some point once we get through a program or to, especially to the airlines, so that they can see it and have 30 days to react before we actually adopt the policy. So there's some steps that we have to follow. But I would say, especially in talking at Jumpstart with some of them, and as Mike said, most of them didn't ask, but some did. And I think, I think the Chicago service with our MRG does make it attractive. That MRG does make it attractive because it becomes by that and it's a long haul. But for other service that we might want to see, having something, might move the needle. As we said, there are 7 airports they're looking at. They're only going to pick 3 or 4. Us having an incentive could potentially move them. Or it could for Alaska for that second service as well, if we wanted. So it allows us to do also, if we so choose to add that to our incentive program.
On United, Chris had mentioned the MRG on the United's O'Hare service. Keep in mind that's not coming from local funds. That's from a small community air service development grant.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would say, as a best practice for airports, it's important to have this program. So ahead of Jumpstart, we did a little bit of research, but Mike's going to continue to help us to kind of do a market analysis and see what airports of our size that have a structure similar to ours are doing, so that we can make comparisons. Chris's point, further define.
I should add that in terms of the financial support packages, otherwise known as minimum revenue guarantees or just revenue guarantees from short, the biggest ones in many cases are being funded by states. Okay, some of the biggest ones I've seen are from the state of Ohio and from the state of Indiana. I'll give you one example that's extreme. Indianapolis Airport did a revenue guarantee with Aer Lingus. Admittedly, that is Dublin service. I think it was 4 times weekly. And that is, I want to say that was an $11 million package annually. So it's huge. That's the biggest one I think I've seen. I think I got the numbers right, but it was huge. It certainly got the talk of the industry when it occurred, recognizing it's a long haul international service. It's a big number, and it was largely funded by the state. And they've got other works too.
Right, and to that, that's not really what we're looking at the moment. We're really looking at the waivers, the incentives that we control and can provide. We can't provide an MRG, nor can C Monterey or Visit Carmel. So it would have to be the business community to provide that if an airline ever asked for that. And we're not hearing that right now, but we do have the one for SCADC, which will support Chicago service. But other than that, MRGs at the moment. So what we would put in here is negotiating. And if an airline is coming and asking, then it's a bigger ask for sure. And we would need to go to the community and get the community. So it would have to be something that they would support from the business perspective of providing MRGs. But really right now we're looking at fee waivers. What is the appetite? How long? And of course we would do marketing, which we do anyway for all of our air service. So we would really focus on new routes if we got new routes. So with that, we'll get some feedback here. We did talk to air service about this initially, this week or last week at our meeting, and we will bring it back again to them, but really wanted everyone to be aware that, there's new guidance, and we really believe it's important to have a program.
Just one last comment on the MRGs in terms of when I built this, I almost did not include the MRGs because I don't think outside of the small community air service grant with United, I don't see us using those, but I put it in here in part just to because airlines will see this eventually, just to let them know we're not, against it necessarily, but my opinion is I don't know if we'll ever use one based on my experience with the community.
Yeah, so just a quick question. Thank you for the presentation. Like in terms of, if we were waiving 100% of landing, apron, gate, and I think there was one other fee there on that slide that
The rental the overnight fees.
the overnight fees. So, looking at terminal revenues for the airport, that would be the majority of the ways in which the airport would see revenue from a new service, but there would still be concessions, fuel, parking, and
PFCs.
car rental,
PFC.
PFCs.
And we're not suggesting waiving the fuel flowage fee either if they take on fuel. That would be another.
So those would be the ways in which the airport would see a financial benefit from new service outside of the typical ways in which we would have terminal revenue generated from a new service. And it would be for your recommendation at this point is 2 years, or that's something that you're gonna come put together a more.
Right now, that's what we are thinking, but we need to do more research. We think 33 years, which FAA's new policy does allow for, is too aggressive. But we think 2 could be something I think we've offered in the past, if I understood. So we have done this in the past for up to 2. So it's how we've done business before. So that's where our starting point was, looking at what we've done in the past and seeing if we still have the appetite for that. That's really what we're looking for.
And what would cost to the airport? And so we briefly touched on kind of what the marginal revenue would be generated from some of the ancillary stuff, but what would the cost to the airport be in bringing on?
We'd have to look because it depends on how often they're coming. If it's twice a week, then the cost is different than if it's daily service too. Let us get you some numbers behind that as we go forward. But we really want to get some idea of do we believe we need to have a program, which we think we do. What do you want us to be looking at? Do you want us to give you an analysis of 1 year versus 2 years? Again, discussion.
Yeah, we could certainly do the analysis. It also depends on the aircraft type. But as Chris said, though, it's going to be a function of the airline, the frequency, and the aircraft type. So if it's Breeze and it's twice a week, that's a lot different than daily, an additional daily flight on United to Denver. And as I said earlier, it'll have more impact on Breeze, any incentive program, than it will have on a United or a Delta or an American even. I don't think, though, we can differentiate by airline. I mean, could we take United down to 1 year? And I'm kind of asking Whitney and Chris here. I can't remember in my own mind. We could take United, or we could take a United type of market, say Denver, down to 1, and maybe a new market like Orange County down to, a different number. That said, I don't know if we can discriminate like that.
You can put parameters behind destinations for sure.
Maybe that's a way to do it.
And if it's an increased frequency to a Denver market and a Seattle market that we want to really get, because we've never been to 3 to Denver or 2 to Seattle, then that's something you could identify. So you can identify it by specific places and routes that you want to see that increased frequency. And a year instead of the 2 for brand new service that's seasonal. So
yeah.
That we can do, but it has to be pretty consistent and it has to.
And I lost you there. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You had
Question. So, we know when Allegiant came in to Portland, that really what they did is they soiled the market because we were in discussions with Alaska to go to Portland. Allegiant came in because of the fact that they were only, I think, 2 days a week. And they are always late and they are inconsistent and they have their Allegiant. So what happened was then they pulled out because people couldn't rely on them and they stopped flying. They had really good coverage in the beginning and then it just dwindled off. Got stuck and then had to fly to San Jose on Alaska. So with Breeze in that regard, be an issue if they did 2 days a week to choose it. John Wayne or Carlsbad, or Long Beach, or wherever they want to be. United flights, and then end up pulling out, and then leave us with less of United and a community that's not very happy. I follow Breeze a little bit. I see that they seem to be doing better than Allegiant and Spirit and Frontier on reliability, but on the other hand, when we let somebody in for a couple of days, it's just tough.
But we can't say, if they choose to want to do it, we can't say no. That's,
Get that.
that's one of the components.
So we don't have to make it really comfortable for them either.
We do
So,
not.
I'm just asking, Mike, you're the professional. Does that happen over and over in communities? Do you see it?
No, not with Breeze. They're a different operator than Allegiant. I will do this. I have a primer package, as I call it, on Breeze. I will send to Chris and Whitney, then they can distribute to you guys. That gives a little bit of background on Breeze in terms of their operational record, the class of service they operate. They're now profitable. Also, something to keep in mind is Breeze was started by, and he's the top dog today, David Nealman. David Nealman has started a lot of airlines and has a pretty good service reputation. He started JetBlue back in the day, who, even though they're going through some harder times now, back when he started them, God, I think that was in the 90s, they have a pretty good service reputation. So I'll send you I think the best way to approach this is I'll send you a primer on Breeze, but they have a pretty good service reputation. Just a quickie on Breeze that might give you an indication. Typically, Breeze starts off with a very low price point. People don't know them and they just assume they're going to be like Allegiant or one of the other ULCCs. After flying them the first time, on average, that same consumer will fly them again and they pay 25% more on average the second ticket, acknowledging this is a totally different airline with a totally different product than other low fare carriers, if you will.
I mean, we have a lot of educational people who go back and forth to that basin, and they would like to have something that was lower cost and reliable. So I mean, I don't have anything against Breeze. I'm just asking the question, does it make a mess with what we got going with United? So that's one question. And then I was excited when I first heard that we were getting a larger plane to Dallas, and then my excitement went to dismay when I found out that it was only one plane a day. And I'm not sure how we're seeing advanced bookings on that, if they're full, or we're starting to see something that kind of falls off.
That's something we did talk with American at Jumpstart about, and they were pretty specific that early morning did not, but that their midday is very strong.
Yep, Chris is spot on.
Okay. Throughout the community, we're the elected officials. We get a lot of requests for Palm Springs because we have a lot of second homeowners from here because of our fog who go there, and particularly in the winter months. So it's just something to put on your radar when you're thinking about it. I don't know if staff's brought that forward, but there's a lot of ask for that. And then the last thing Seattle, which is a bit of an issue, is the seasonal part of it. I think they pulled out last year right before Thanksgiving.
No, they actually pulled up a week after January. They went through the holiday and
That's okay, that's correct.
and they came back on the 14th, so about 5 weeks of the
Okay,
hiatus.
so what happens is we have a lot of families here that have kids that go to school there. And then they all had to drive to San Jose to take their kids to fly back to Seattle after the school district, the colleges were, and then when Alaska stopped. So it's just one of those things that if somebody, I guess you or our staff would take a look at the 3 big schools there, I don't know what they are, but take a look at when they go back in January and not let them do that again, because seriously, my eye doctor, somebody at my dental office, it was like everywhere I went, somebody was complaining about the Seattle flight, the timing on it. So, anyway, those are my comments, but I guess my biggest concern, and it is a concern with a couple days a week, is just that it screws up the market for the carrier that is growing and flourishing and has become our number 1 carrier.
I think just to add, Marianne, I had to get a little bit of education on the LA basin, and the people who want to fly to LAX don't want to fly to John Wayne, don't want to fly to Burbank. So it's a factor of, and Mike can speak to this, the market stimulation. Mike LaPierre used to say it all the time, our market responds to the stimulation. So if they were to add something other than LAX in that basin, it would only bolster maybe for the United service and for the Breeze service, whatever that may be. So
yeah. The point is, and just as you guys know, you guys have been going in and out, so I haven't heard everything on Breeze to Orange County and United LAX. That's a fair point. I mean, how much of that will overlap? I will say generally the carriers, the ULCCs, although Breeze is a little different animal in my opinion, as I've said, they typically feel like the 2 travel bases are completely different. I'm talking with Delta specifically on this issue. They're going after different people, and they don't typically consider them competitors for the most part. That said, they'll have an impact on the pricing, but at 2 times a week, I think the Breeze service most likely is going to be incremental and not have a ton of impact on United. That said, you never know, and it's a fair point, but I think we'll be okay there. Also question, this is the part that went on. You were mentioning second homes in a specific market. I didn't pick that up. What was that one again?
Springs.
And that's something else we have since Jumpstart last year. We've been hammering PS. We've been doing some analysis, and we've been introducing incrementally, it's a marathon, not a sprint, to the airlines that there's an appetite in our market for that destination.
What was, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it again. What was the market?
Spring.
Palm Springs. Yes. Okay. That one's a trickier one, and Breeze isn't in that yet. I think they might be in that 7, but I'm speculating on that.
And that might be also, Mike, it might be a seasonal piece.
Yep.
But it is something I think to keep our kind of on our radar. And we had, what was ExpressJet? When ExpressJet was flying, ExpressJet had just announced that they were going to do Palm Springs for Monterey, and the bookings were good. And then ExpressJet folded. But they had just, started the booking and doing things, and everyone, the reaction from the community was really good. So just FYI. And they also did Long Beach, and Long Beach was good for us.
I would say, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I can't remember how many years ago that was, and our enplanements were a lot less. But even at that, the part of it was the fee.
The affordability.
Yeah, it was affordability. I think it was like $109 one way at that time. And that was a long time ago, but it also was that. And I'm going to say one more thing. I just had a granddaughter that I brought up from LA for a couple of things, and I looked at Southwest. Southwest, because of their increased prices and their baggage fee and everything else now, have become a lot less attractive for anybody that is driving from here to San Jose to fly to Burbank or to Orange County. I think it's giving us a minute in the market to really take it. I ended up bringing her up on a United, and it cost me, I want to say it was like $70 more to bring her from LAX to Monterey and back than if I had gone to San Jose. And if you say $70 and you got gas and time and anxiety if you make the flight, it's all crazy. So anyway, those are all marketing tools, I think, as we go out and talk to people. But we have an opportunity to see some of that Southwest market right now.
Your discussion points are, I think, one of the reasons that we think that the Orange County service on Breeze would work and not hurt the other airlines. You kind of articulated it. In addition, you talked about Palm Springs. If I'm reading tea leaves right and we get Breeze, I think you have a lot better chance of getting Palm Springs than them also. And a big part of the Breeze argument, at least for me, is you get one service, but with their growth, you're going to get, and that works, you're going to get a lot more. And it all kind of ties together. It's a package, if you will. And yeah, that one would only be seasonal. I don't think a lot of people, I know I wouldn't want to go to Palm Springs in the summer, but again, it's part of a picture or a portfolio of services, if you will.
Also, some of them want to come here in the summer because they don't want to be there
Yep.
115 degrees. So it goes both ways.
Yep.
Okay, let's open up the public comment and we'll come back. For the public wishing to discuss this issue here in the boardroom. I see none. Any member in viewing us remotely? If you'd like to talk, please raise your hand electronically.
Mr. Chair, I see none.
Okay. Let's come back for more questions from the board, Mike. Don't go anywhere. Director Jaguar, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. We talked about this in our service. Support it 100%. I think we did. Actually, I do have one question that you get to, is this published, or do you get to hold this and use this as a
Publish.
okay?
So, and you need to share it first with the airlines, give them 30 days to react to it.
Yeah.
Similar to a PFC application, just because they don't like it doesn't change it, but at least you have to give them the opportunity to review it.
Yeah.
And we can do it with, and Whitney and I talked about an application, a lot of what we're seeing in a lot of application where the airline, they request it.
Yeah.
If they want to use that incentive program. So it's not where you always offer it.
Yeah.
They know it's there. And if they want it as part of their, to start up a new service or to add that frequency, then they'll ask for it.
Okay.
So that's something that I recommend.
Can you bring up the proposed
It's the last page of what you have in front of you that I just handed out to during the That's the last page there.
And I want to stress, this is definitely a draft. It's going to change.
and you want our input, so I'm going to ask.
Yes, exactly.
Say that, so you bring that up just so, or you your own, but you definitely have that. Oops, I don't have the feed number.
There we go. I had to get rid of something.
Yeah, there we go. So Director Gagliani, what do you think of these? Anything you want? Your feeling on that?
No, I mean, again, this is just a draft, but we talked in broad terms, education services with bust out, that's all. You guys are gonna, you guys are doing research and this will get informed better.
Correct.
So you're gonna bring us.
We'll bring it back to air service first, let you pick through it a little bit and give us some sense of it's looking good. But again, you know, broad strokes, do you think the 2 seasons or up to 24 months is a big piece rather than 36 months or 12 months. So kind of that broad stroke look at.
Again, you guys are the experts. Say that your time, the duration is an informed duration. You guys are doing that from an informed base, so.
So you're good with two
Yeah.
seasons up to 24 months?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it looks like only 1 year if they just bring in bigger aircraft.
Or additional frequency on a currently served route.
Okay. Director Whittle.
No, I think it's a good start. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. I will. And I'll give my comments to Air Service so that you all have them. I haven't had a chance to look at it. People.
We can't 3 years.
Right. In FAA's guidance, that's correct, up to 36 months.
Another question to you in your opinion, since we're a little torn up around here right now, we have a lot of moving parts. Do you see that we're better off to encourage all of this right now? And if you were an airline, would you be more prone to jump on this in conjunction with finishing a new terminal, having parking straight, knowing like how all the parts are gonna fit in? Or is this a good thing right now with what we've got, which has some confusion? To go ahead and start hoping that we can just work out any bugs and not have dissatisfied airlines or dissatisfied passengers.
You guys are breaking up again. I think you're finished. I hope so. From an airline perspective, I'd go for it now. One, these things take time. So by the time the terminal is finished, some of this stuff probably won't happen till then. That's one. And two, I can tell you, being a former network planner at an airline, they don't even consider this stuff. It's just not a thought. They think that the airport is a means to an end, and unless it's just a disaster, it doesn't really matter. In fact, some of the guys, they don't even, I mean, like the ULCCs, Allegiant doesn't care if it's cheaper, and I know that's not the proxy here. I actually, from doing one of my presents there in forecast, I do think you need a bigger, newer terminal. It shows this community and the world-class product you have to offer off better. But again, to answer your question more succinctly, I do it now, and I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Okay, so here's my point. We've got holding rooms that are already too small for some of the instances that we get into when we get a late flight and we get people that are left sitting down there. We have bad air conditioning and heating. We have under capacity for bathrooms. We've got things right now that we're dealing with, and staff is doing the best they can with it. But my issue is if we start with something new and like, wow, we're going to just wow you and take good care of you. And then to our passengers, we deliver a substandard experience. They won't fly it again. They won't fly the airline again, nor will they fly us again. So that's my point. I just want to think this through and be logical about it, of what our capacity is that we're building right now. And believe me, my whole background is marketing and finance. That's me. I love it. And what I live for, but I just don't want to give people a substandard place to do business and knowing that we've already got some issues with some of this. So that's, I mean, I think it's a staff thing, but I think it's a board thing. It's our determination if we want to go forward, knowing that we've already got issues.
That's certainly a reasonable point. Chris or someone there, when's the new terminal expected to be completed?
We anticipate being in the new terminal in May of 2027. But
Okay.
also, there are times in the day where we have nothing going on. Like right now, there is nothing. So it's really working with the airlines to position the time they can within their schedule too, and not overlap all of the other activity that we have going on. So I think it's a conversation that you have to have with them, and especially if it's someone new coming into the market, you can definitely have that conversation when they're testing it of what's the best and optimal time.
And working with the station manager from said airlines would be a key piece of this also. And if it's a new airline like a Breeze, certainly more communications per Chris's comment will need to take place in terms of that and some of the issues. In terms of the currently served, like a United, I think long as there's good communication with the station manager and their personnel, that you can help alleviate any issues, if you will. I recognize it's fairly small in the current terminal in most places, and that's even before the work areas. But I think if you work with the airline as a team, it probably hopefully can be resolved. But it's a fair point.
Okay, so, and Chris, I know that, but I also know the airlines tell us they're coming, when they're coming, what they're gonna fly here and what they're gonna do. And I know you can try to work with them, but when they say we've got a connection to blah, 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 and they've already figured out their whole network before they tell you they're coming. I mean, yeah, so it's just a concern of mine that that is gonna be an issue. And we started Sun Country, we made a big deal about Sun Country. And then I can't remember what happened with the timing, but we had people from United that were sitting down there just steaming because they couldn't get off of the plane because they had to wait for us to do the balloons and the big hullabaloo with Sun Country. And I'm still hearing about it. So I want us to attract all this new business, but I want us to keep it when we attract it. I guess that's it.
Okay, it's a fair point.
Director Lund.
Yeah, in terms of the air carrier incentive program, I don't have any comments at this point, but I'm looking forward to seeing a more final version based on what staff feels would be appropriate given the market. And I think back to Director Lapierre's kind of parting comments in that the board would need to do everything that we could to support staff in finding increased revenue for the airport, and I do see this as an opportunity for that. I think we should be cognizant of the fact that there are people in our community who do want to see fewer flights than more. I think they're more impacted personally by general aviation than by the commercial aviation, as we see in our board monthly like noise complaints. But I did want to actually just have you speak to what Marianne had just said in terms of, what falls under the auspices of the responsibilities of the board and staff as it relates to coordinating with airlines and, them saying when they're coming or not coming and what we have say over how we can impact that and how we can't. Obviously, a program like this as an incentive is something that the board could sign off that would have an impact. But my understanding is what we can do or can't do is pretty limited.
That's accurate. The airlines set their schedules. For example, I talked earlier about Breeze in terms of they're trying, I think, squeeze capacity into some of their slot restrictions in Orange County. So they're going to have very time specific wants, if you will. When it comes to an airline like a United, they're going to schedule those flights, one that's operationally consistent. I already know they're going to have some challenges and they're looking into how they're going to schedule additional frequency into the market. And that's more about how their Denver hub works and not Monterey specifically, but that obviously ties to that. And they will schedule it so that it hits their connecting banks and they maximize connections. So you're absolutely correct on that. We have input on the matters, but obviously the airlines will dictate that. Now, after saying all that, if we're talking about incentives, we might be able to tweak the incentives, taking that into consideration, if that makes sense. It could be more time of day specific need be. I don't recall seeing one that way, but given what I just heard, maybe that is an issue. Again, we can't tell them they can't come into the market, but we can tweak the incentives in a way, and then and note the word incentive. We can incentivize them if it's to not offer those patterns if the incentive is a big part of their decision making. Does that make sense?
Just clarify something that you said. So for example, we have guidelines, recommendations that there are not, it's, prior to 6 a.m. or after 11.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you saying that the incentive program could be structured in such a way that there would be incentives for flights that fell within our kind of recommended guidelines, but not for flights outside of those guidelines?
Let me put it this way. I haven't seen one that does that, but I'm not sure there's anything that says you can't. And based upon what I'm hearing, we could potentially do that. Again, we got to go. This will mean we have to go through the FAA guidance in detail. But and maybe Chris and Whitney, you've looked at it closer than I have. I think we could do that, and it would be a way of making the incentives pretty conservative, if you will. I don't know, Chris and Whitney, do you have any comments, or am I reading it differently?
I haven't looked at it in that much detail, Mike, that I would be able to say that that's doable or not. But again, we'll look at it. It's just the first conversation. As you said, we need to look, we're an airport and we need to be able to provide air service that the community will support and wants. What we hear from Sea Monterey and Visit Carmel is the basin is one of their biggest attractors today. If we can take people that are driving from the LA Basin for a weekend and put them on an aircraft, that's a win. I would think. But again, first conversation, we're just stepping into this. We hear kind of recapping what we heard at Jumpstart for you. And the fact that we have the opportunity to rewrite a program now that there's new guidelines. So all that said, I think we'll let us do some research and come back with different recommendations, but wanted to get the sense of the belief that we need to update to have a program that's viable.
Just to say, I am very interested in hearing what Breeze would be looking at. I mean, one of the things I hear is concerns from people in the community that prices to fly out of Monterey are too high, and so the opportunity to bring in a low cost fare carrier is something that's really intriguing to me. But I also want to see where that conversation leads in terms of other ways it could impact us. But I think you had something to add also.
No, other than just to say, look, we'll take a look at this. One of the things that just the first thing that comes to my mind is you have a grant assurance obligation with the FAA,
right,
to make sure that you run the airport profitably. If you currently have an airline that's running a route at a particular time and it's profitable, and you try and subsidize that, it might run afoul of that. But again, the question is a very detailed question, and it requires us to go through a lot of different FAA rulings and regulations, and we'll do that. Yeah. We'll take a look at it.
My question is mostly for the general public to be aware of kind of what falls within our purview and what doesn't, so that they're aware as well.
Yeah.
I have no other questions.
Okay, and your feeling on the few seasons of.
I much like Miriam, this is the first time I'm seeing this. I'd love to see kind of. My understanding is that it's just a draft. At this point, I have no comments on it, but I do look forward to seeing a refined program.
And they were hoping to get some direction from us.
I think we'd say it looks good. We just don't. You're asking us, we're not voting on it. It's a discussion, so it looks okay.
Okay.
But
we're good with it, Director Miller. I think it really is just don't want to bring a policy or a program where we haven't had that first conversation.
Okay.
So we will do we'll look at others. We will work with Mike, and we will come back with something more defined and refined to the next Air Service Committee meeting for this conversation.
So Mike, you still with us?
I am here, I think. Yep.
Well, because I think you've been with us 6, 7 years.
I don't remember the time period, but I'm not going to say it's wrong.
We transitioned from uh, meat and hunt. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the Chicago, you think there's a very good chance we'll see that next year, but on a limited basis, not daily service.
You guys were going out in and out there at first. You said something about you were talking about. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, you said that Chicago,
Oh,
we would get Chicago next year, but on like weekends only, or what's your
yeah. Yeah, I think if it starts in 2026, it would start off on weekends only. And it would be a way for them to tip their toe in the water, see how the market reacts. And depending on how that goes, let's say it goes very well, then they would start hopefully more than that, maybe even as much as daily service the following spring, summer. That's typically when they start new routes is spring, summer, because that's when the demand peaks generally, and go from there. And that's the thinking as to why we're approaching it that way. It's a low risk way to test the market and see how it responds.
Okay, very good. Leakage, you thought we were doing better. Any idea what our leakage is now to, especially San Jose and San Francisco? Oakland hasn't been that much competition.
Yeah, that was in our last quarterly update when Chris was talking to me about doing this with the ACIP. That was a part of it. And I kind of took it a little bit different direction so there'd be a story. But that's where a lot of your growth is coming from. I want to say the latest numbers we're getting closer to, I think it's the retention was maybe in the 30s and I don't want to speak to a number, but it's definitely improved. And on a percentage basis, the improvement in leakage ties closely to your traffic growth. It's almost like an inverse relationship or a double negative, if you will, from a quantitative standpoint.
My hope is that would help attract a new service. We're looking at a cost per employment of around $15.50 when we open up the new terminal. All those things sound like something you can use direct service here, or
I'm sorry, you guys keep breaking in and out. Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Mike, I'll speak. He was asking about the CPI when we get into the new terminal, which we've shared with the airlines, and the airlines had no issues with it at all. So that's been shared with all the airlines in a couple presentations, and their feedback was that this is doable. So
Yeah. I don't think that's an issue. Your costs are right in line with other airports your size, and the airlines would not be shy if they thought it was way too high. From my experience.
and lastly, I had a question on a direct flight. Do they still do direct flights? And I always direct from Monterey to Portland, Portland, Seattle, then Seattle, Portland, Portland, Monterey would be good. You don't see direct flights that often now anymore.
You do, but it's typically by accident. So essentially you're saying a one stop, as I call it. So if someone was going Monterey to Denver on the same plane and that plane went on to St. Louis, that would be the direct service. Um, you'll see a little bit on what you described for Seattle and Portland, but again, it's almost an accident. As they build Portland back up, that being Alaska post-COVID, you might see more of that. I will say, who does this is Breeze. We talked to them. If if they came into Orange County and that was successful, we've talked to them about adding Provo service, and specifically the Provo service. And this would take some jiggering in terms of scheduling. They couldn't do it today, but they also fly Provo, Washington D.C., which is a pretty big market for you guys, particularly from the military. And what our proposal was, you would fly Monterey, Provo on the same plane, direct service, then on beyond to Washington Dulles. So they're one carrier that does target that sort of thing, just in part because they're so small. Hopefully that answered your question.
Okay, very good. And finally, Delta. We had Delta at Salt Lake like 19 years ago. They left the market. Chance of them coming back?
We had a very good meeting with them. We had a very good meeting last year. There's no timeline, so will they be there in the next year or two? I don't think in a year, in 2 years, I doubt it, but they will, let me say this, they will serve Monterey eventually. They like the market, and Delta is the premium airline brand in the United States today, with United number two. But Delta is the premium brand. They like adding premium markets, and Monterey is that. So I think you will get them. I just can't give you a definitive timeline. And it would be Salt Lake City.
Yeah, we had it before, but it was with a CRJ 200, so.
It won't be that. It would not be that. I can guarantee they don't even fly those except for a few. They don't have 50 seaters anymore. The only ones they fly are EAS. So it would be probably start a large regional jet along the lines of what you see on United.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. And yeah, I think the 2 seasons up to 2 years is a good in the middle. Well, that was
Thank you, Mike.
interesting.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time.
All right. I'll let you guys go. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Okay. We can push on and take a break now. What's the call of the board? Okay. No, we've got board report we can go through real quick. Okay, does anybody have any questions for the staff report that were submitted to us? Director Amati.
On the first page for the terminal feedback, I did just want to again congratulate staff. We had a really glowing comment from a passenger who was having a tough day, had a great experience and utilizing the airport. So wanted to pass on congratulations to staff for that one. I did want to ask in terms of the PA system not being able to understand, is that something that is a known issue? Was this just kind of a one-off?
So I would say on the whole, the PA system operates well. It's user error. So if you go to some airports, you see it's like a hand mic. Ours are a telephone. So you have to really use it as a telephone in order for your voice to project properly. So when they use it as like a walkie-talkie or a hand mic,
It doesn't pick up the same.
doesn't pick up. So that's something we have to continually, operations has to continually remind airline staff to use the equipment properly.
Understood. And then for the second item there about the support getting to long-term parking for folks who have mobility issues. I know that I think Director Level has brought that up previously. Is there any discussion in terms of what we can do to help support those who are having mobility issues and getting to the long-term parking with the ongoing construction?
So at this point, we continue to look at it, but we don't have the shuttle service. But what we've done with our parking is we do on our parking page recommend that people park in the short-term parking lot. So we've really defined each lot and the use for it. So at this point, that's what we've done to address that, is if you have mobility, you should be parking in this lot rather than the other. We will continue to look as we will shuffle yet again the parking here in the near future, probably in the next 3 months.
But then they're great, or there's no waiver for mobility issues.
If they have placards, then they do not. They pay the lower rate if they have handicap placards. Yes, yes, they pay the lowest rate for people with handicap placards to park in our premium.
I wonder if there's some signage that we could put up for the long-term parking, suggest notifying folks that, hey, if you have a mobility issue and a handicap placard, you can get the lower rate for parking in the short term. I wonder if that'd be something that would be helpful for our passengers.
We can try. People don't seem to read signs at all.
No.
Which is why we've really defined it on our website in our parking area, maybe specifically, but let us get together again and see
Okay,
we can do.
I also wanted to know, how did the triangular drill go? Was there a report out in terms of?
There is something in the operations report, but I'll let me speak to it. So there is a paragraph and some information in the operations cover page of their report here in the packet.
So we had a successful triennial drill. There were some, as usual, items identified that we're gonna follow up on. But on the whole, it was very successful.
Such as?
So with our station being at a new location, so that's something that we have to iron out. The incident command vehicle, its positioning, kind of some nuanced things that go with response to a mass casualty incident.
Actually, it's in the fire report.
Great. And then in terms of the noise comment block, there was on item 8. We reached out to the flight school to remind them about our noise abatement guidelines and to keep our neighbors in mind. I'm just curious, what is the flight school's response to that? When we share their noise abatement guidelines?
I would say that the flight school is usually receptive. Additionally, they have posted signage. I would also say that we've made improvements. The FAA has made improvements in what is available to pilots in terms of when they do their research and looking up airports to state that these guidelines exist.
Flight school, it's a new instructor. So it really is again, training and discussion of have they given that new instructor the parameters and the guidelines that we would request that they look under. It always goes, a lot of times it goes back to continued conversations and training.
Do they sign an MOU when they're coming on, just saying like, I have seen the?
I don't know the flight school's policies on what they.
That's outside of our purview.
They're not
So,
opinions, yeah, they're.
I also just, in terms of the commercial flights on time versus delayed, is there anything that from an airport, from an operational perspective that we can do? I know that so much of it is flights arrive delayed from other locations and then that has trickle down impacts, but is there anything that we can do? I know that, when I try to fly for work, it's so stressful to be on a plane where you're making a connecting flight and now you're running in another terminal trying to make your connection. Is there anything that we can do from our own operations to try to limit that?
Again, I think you stated that if it's delayed coming in, it's delayed going out, or if it's weather, it's typically delayed because of some impact in the system, whether it be air traffic in the incoming airport being restricted, which you get in SFO a lot, or it's weather at that airport, which is delaying and restricting the airspace, et cetera. So really, I can think that there's not much we can do here. Our flights, again, airport is available. A lot of times our flights are leaving early. They're very succinct and very efficient here in loading passengers and moving that aircraft. You're not in line number 10 or 11 when you're leaving here, as you might be going out of another airport, even SFO.
Right.
So I think, our side of it moves efficiently. It's really
It's happening everywhere else.
within the whole system.
Okay. In your.
Speak that, I think that we need to really do a weather warning on our website and say to people, there is extreme weather in Dallas area or in the Midwest. It is impacting flights, because that's what it is. All those tornadoes and all those horrible things that have happened other places. I mean, we're sitting here in little la la land going, why the hell isn't my plane on time? And those people are getting pelted with, hail the size of face. I think, the one thing we could do is to say to people, look at the weather of where it's coming from, where they get there.
Yeah.
My friends were delayed 2 days in Dallas. to get here, but it was Dallas that delayed it. It wasn't us. We were sitting here and, you know, in the morning, sun in the afternoon, so.
Yeah.
It,
Chris, on the planning, marketing, capital projects monthly report, you said that HP was able to place the order for the steel fabrication. Are we buying US steel? We are, okay, so there's no tariff impacts on that. Great, and then I did have just a couple. This report, item number 5 under staff control. There was an issue with Pebble Beach buses parked and occupying the parking for a long time. Just, is there we can do to address that? Are they falling within the guidelines and parameters that we lay out?
I'd say on the whole, yes. I think we do allow up to 3 on the curb, but if there's another bus there, which there was another, it looks like we had floor. So let me take this back to the team and make sure that we're patrolling the curb and keeping it limited to the amount that we say it's available to, which I believe is 3 at a time.
Okay.
We have delays and there are just people waiting, you know, they just try to come and pick up. So
It's
I think
just,
that
it's
might
a
be
very
factor.
congested area,
Agreed.
so I think whenever there's any issue out there, it becomes much
Magnified.
bigger. Yeah, so, I did wanna ask about the Real ID rollout and whether or not there were any impacts here or operationally, how that felt.
We saw no change. We were prepared, we were watching, and I would say these aren't official TSA numbers, but we were pretty compliant ahead of time. It does require a little bit extra screening if you don't have anything, so I think we advertised to folks to be prepared if you did not have something that was Real ID compliant, but we had no issues.
Great, and then just item 44 on the police report, the FAA equipment issues. Is that something where that equipment has already been fixed, or? I know it's FAA, so it's not our responsibility to fix it, but.
This particular issue is a lighting issue, and it turned out that there was no issue. It was just kind of like a gremlin in the system. We couldn't find exactly what the issue was. When we came to check in the morning, everything was working appropriately.
It's like when you take your car into the shop, it's making a squeaking noise.
There's no squeaking noise.
Jen, I don't know if this is how you want us to go through this when I have questions like this out of the report, if you want me to just go through all of them or what is effective for you, but
Usually we take a specific questions on the staff report. If it's something that covered one of the committee meetings before we come into that, first.
I don't have any yet. I just wanted to say going forward, if you feel this is the appropriate way for me to ask these
Yeah, I
questions.
seem to be working on it.
Okay, great. That was everything I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director, the staff report?
no, but, so it came up with, when someone parks in our short-term parking lot with a and then the plane comes back in after the gentleman has left the booth, there is no way for them to pay the lower rate. So when they go out of short term and they go there, they are charged the full rate. So I think I sent an email on it. Maybe nobody got it, but I had a request of somebody that was gone to our east for 20 some days and they came back and paying the $30 or whatever it is that we charge a day for short term because their plane came in at 11 o'clock. So
Our parking attendants are scheduled to be here 40 or 45 minutes after the last arrival. If that does happen, we do have the ability to refund the difference if they let us know. So that's something that can be done.
attendant is here 45 minutes after the last. I've been on that arrival many times and there is no car. I've had one time when my gas didn't work, then the Del Rio's police came and I waited about 15 minutes for them to come, which was fine, they didn't have a problem. But I'm not sure someone is there 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, and I can say about personal experience of the last 3 or 4 times I've come in, there has been no.
We can look into it, but that's what the contract states.
Okay, well, that might be something you wanna make a note of, because I think it might be. And I do think, I mean, the people who talked to me about it, they were very pleasant about it, but they just said that maybe we could figure out a way to fix that, to exit. Fortunately, they can't. So. I will tell them that they would like to have a refund on their 20 or 21. Water station, water bottle filling.
So we've moved to monitoring the filters more frequently. They should all be green now. We're also gonna put up the signage that was requested about the restrooms. So we're moving forward per your recommendation on that issue.
And we, I think they were changing them quarterly. We're gonna move to every other month. Changing, be proactive on the filters and just change them more frequently. Fall into that gap of the last person that uses it, and we just being proactive and changing the filters more frequently.
I think passengers, A, and B, we have more people who are interested in sustainability. I mean, it's just makes sense that it would get more use, therefore it would need more. The last thing, did anybody get my email, Scott? I think I on one. No one's getting my, they're not bouncing back to me. Okay, the last issue was that we have hangar E7, I think it is. John Shearer. And he has been without electricity since we had the issue. Whitney, you're shaking your head. He has been very patient, but I was at a social function. His wife is the president of MPS. And she said to me, it might be time that you all think rent, because he's been very patient. He bought a small generator that is operating the door, but it's not what he's paying. I don't understand hangars, don't even pretend to, but I think there's 2 hangars in a building or something. About it now 3 times, so I would like to have an answer for him.
So we did have to replace the panel. The connection that came from PG&E from the street side connected to the hangar that blew down. So we had to install a new panel into the hangars that remained. Now we're waiting for PG&E to make that connection from the street to this new hangar. So it's just a PG&E process.
No.
I haven't. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, this was 2 weeks ago that he told me for the 3rd time. So just FYI, maybe somebody could give him a call if you need his. And if there's another person who's impacted, I don't know if there is, but it seemed to me when I don't know who that is. Maybe you all could figure that out and get in touch with them. These are the kind of things that just hit us out in the community when we're out and about. Yeah. So I'll get back with Kelly and tell them that we're changing the filters and we appreciate it. They put the machine in.
I've not gotten any emails from you directly at all.
The last one I received was on May 23rd regarding the proclamation for the executive director. Need to figure out why.
Me and Alvarez, we are never going to be compatible.
Anything else? It doesn't hurt to, ask or reply to make sure they got if you set it up that if it's open, sometimes there's a way to set it up that if an email. Do that on ours,
You have to do it on your own.
we have to do that on our own, but I don't know how to do that, so. Scott, I believe it's a state law that requires us to pay the lowest rate to people that are disabled. Parking,
I would have to check on that to be specific. I'm not sure.
yeah,
I'll have to look at it.
number of, laws that, usually the people that have disability placards, they know all.
Yeah.
But it gives them quite a lot of benefits and reduce, latitude of not being able to. So we're gonna redo our parking. And, you know, I appreciate them both. Filling wire and Scott State, but,
Yes.
also KSBW did a great, gave it a lot of airtime on the, thank you, Director Love. I have nothing, as far as the standing committee goes, finance, you guys have been pretty active in everything we've gone through. Same thing with air service, it was nice to have, Mike here. To kind of invite him periodically, I think is a very good thing, Chris. Not have a lease meeting, so nothing to update. Second, local jurisdiction, Director Leppel, anything to report on that?
Yes, I should report, I met with, Councilmember Kim Barber, from Monterey. And, discussed, meeting with the. That will be set up sometime in July.
Formation Commission, Director Level, anything to report?
There was no.
Director Pink is here for Regional Taxi Transportation Agency of Monterey County. Just that they are still moving forward with active signaling on Highway 68. They did increase the funding from $500,000 to $1 million. I am hearing, I mean, the first Caltrans was very supportive of roundabout. It's like they were with adaptive signaling, and they are spearheading this project. Some roundabouts on 68. As we get the adaptive signaling in, they will. Metro District Association Director.
July 16th or 18th.
Bay Area Government again, Director.
I attended, but there was absolutely nothing to report on. So,
Okay. If the board has a question for the other member, comment, any member of the public want to talk about the board report that we just spent the last. See any member of the public reviewing remotely wishing to talk, raise your hand electronically.
Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay. Real quick, the last item before we go into closed session. I did attend the AAAE conference from Atlanta. I've attached Notes from that was a very good conference. We had over 2,500 workers from more than 275 different airports. That was a record. They also had 200 vendors, another conference record. If you notice, I listed the number of challenges and opportunities. The challenges outnumber the opportunities 2 to 1. The budget is down for everything, with the exception of one. Also, FAA has an airport division that was staffed with 750 employees. That's going to be under 500 employees now. A lot of people have taken walking out the door, so they're taking advantage of an early retirement. With over $3 billion in infrastructure that ends September 2026. Much unspent money still, but we're trying to get as much of that as possible, right, Mark? Okay, thank you. Over the next 5 years, they estimate, if you ask all airports what they'd like to do, that bill comes to 175 million, but not to worry. FAA is a shortfall there. The talent airports are complaining about doesn't seem to be out there to take a job. TSA, half of TSA tickets is going for deficit reduction.
The federal deficit?
Yes, yes. TSA lane money ends October, exit lane money October of this year. Talk about it being reinstated. TSA is also asking some airports to start paying for equipment if there's upgrades or new construction. They are? Okay.
In the new terminal, we'll have to pay to move the existing equipment from here to this location to the other location, as well as a few other things. All factored into the GMP.
Opportunities,
Can I just say that's gonna be. You've got to have it the day that you're here.
Yeah.
Hey, you're over there.
Well, the good thing is in the new terminal, we'll get one new exit lane, so we'll get new equipment installed. So we'll at least have one lane that can be open, as well as we can move one of the baggage screening components. So down one baggage screening component, have one exit. So thankfully, we are getting a new one.
You're paying for the exit lane, anything, automation?
It will be an automated exit doors.
That
Yes,
does not require a person to be there.
correct.
Oh, that's good. To say something? Oh, okay.
She kept the nail on my head.
Real quick, I'll try to finish this up real quick. Yeah, we talked a lot about President Trump apparently he wants owned an airline. Get what it was called? He also said that he likes aviation, he knows aviation, he does not like noise, he has sued the Palm Beach International Airport 5 times, he lost every time. Is that they were intentionally redirecting planes to fly over his property down there. Some airports are considering private type front curb drop off fees, airport toll road fees. There is an opportunity if we wanted to do something like that. Speaker's thoughts where we should do that and still have those things paid for by FAA. Right now, if it gets revenue, FAA won't pay for it. like our parking lot, they don't pay for it, but they thought there was an opportunity to do this. Some airports are also taking over their FD operation. I'm not recommending that. There is still a lot of interest from private industry to invest in the airport. You and me, Mary Ann, gave us it's most airports don't want to do it. The new FAA grant assurances require that you cooperate with ICE. You also eliminate any I or DBE programs of diversity, equity. Our feeling is that we are pretty insulated because we are not a city government or a government that would happen. And then finally, I had the opportunity to talk to the guy who is going to be building our jet bridges. They're going to be up in Utah. These things are $1 million a piece. We got 5 of them. We're not getting the glass ones, but maybe that's a good thing. Or about that. We'll have 5 fixed on the side of the building. They're about 45 feet. And that move that attaches to that. And that can be anywhere from 110 to 150 feet. Take 1 to 2 months to build. The movable ones are 2 to 3 months to build. So, and these are custom made to our specification here. The longest one could be up to 200 feet. The glass we're not getting just mainly because of cost. They're 20% more, so there'll be $1,200,000 per. They come with a lot of problems. One, they're like a greenhouse. They get very hot. You got to have an air conditioner on top of them that's dedicated only for that building. Where the solid fridge uses the air conditioning and also filters in the aircraft. Also to keep them clean and be as much as per week. These things get dirty on the outside and on the inside with people touching the glass. So maybe I mean I was one that was kind of hoping for the glass, but the glass comes with a lot of problems. He did recommend an alternative, and I put here. This is at the end of the fix. You can see that glass, full glass panel. Those are $5,000 a piece, or $20,000 per bridge. He recommends at the end of the fix and at the end of the articulating the moving one. It just floods it with natural light. You don't get that corridor to nowhere sort of feeling. Had a conversation with and she's well aware of this. And if we have some money, who knows? We may see those. All I have to report. Happy to ask any questions. I thought it was a worthwhile conference, and I.
Because when we first started talking about this in serious terminal lots, those jet bridges were $750.
The glass one?
No.
Yeah. So from they're going to be, I mean, I thought these were just off the shelf items, but these are going to be custom. If there's no questions, we will go into closed, session.
I did have some quick questions for Chris.
Yes.
The HP sub list for the first phase of work, is that something that?
I will get that out. Yes, I meant to include it in my email, so I didn't forgot, so.
Okay. And then, remember you sent out that note about the, investigation that's gonna be done. What's the timeline for that?
We're gonna talk about that in closed session.
That's close,
Public comment, any public? About in virtual, anybody wishing to say anything, raise your hand.
And Mr. Chair, I see no hands.
Okay. We are adjourned to the closed session. Thank you, Brian, for coming and sticking around. It's all.
Thank you. Would you mind if I approach and hand it over?
Please do. Welcome to the well.
Right.
We are back in session. The
Yep.
time is 12:32. Denise, you wanted to say something?
Your microphone.
I got you. Did you get it?
We are back in open session. The time is 12:32. We have nothing to report out of closed session. Next item on the agenda is pending request for future agenda items. Do we have any?
We were gonna bring back in July the ordinance and those three ordinances.
That we were going to either eliminate or modify or do something.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that's gonna be, got a request for, conference attendance. Did, everybody respond to that? Responded, please look that list over. Nice opportunities here in town, including the one in, February, I believe, or end of January, and then the CSDA this August. So we try to get it on the early bird register.
Well, so CSDA and the AAE in January do not count in the two.
Yeah, we try to do two, we try to limit our.
They don't count in those two, correct, but we still need to know so that we can pay
Yeah,
for
so
them, so we still need to approve
I
them.
did finish the Carl Cotton coming out. And so what I was gonna say was, if you wanna do the CSDA the end of August, you all should let Denise know right away so that we can get the early bird.
But that's the big one, right? That's the one that I.
It's really good because we have some.
We have to bring it back in July for
It has to be approved, by. Yeah, it's also, they really focus on state law where the other conferences. It's a good one, and I always go to it when it's local. Very good, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye, we are adjourned at 12:30. Thank you, staff, for bringing all this in front of us. Yeah, it was a long meeting, but we covered a lot of important things.